The NFL draft is all about supply and demand. And it's about 6 teams right now that have a big need at the quarterback position and upgrading it. And that impacts the 2025 quarterback class greatly because we expect to see some names pushed into the first round. We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. And what the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. DP, today's show, man, quarterback needy teams, their impact on the draft, right? Will those teams trade up? Will they trade down? Will they go get free agents, right? What will they do? We're going to have that really interesting conversation and then make the case for wide receiver 2 in this draft, right? We talked about wide receiver 1. Who is wide receiver 2? And then we're going to talk about what? The biggest bag fumblers. And we know that that's stock down, right? Which guys did not trend upwards from this past weekend. DP, we got a good conversation about quarterbacks that I'm ready to get into it. Let's get into it.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. QBneedy teams, guys. We have about, right now, 6 teams that's projected to need, 5 to 6, that's projected to need quarterbacks entering the 2025 NFL Draft. The Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, and a team that some people may go back and forth on, Keith, the Miami Dolphins. Their situation with Tua Tagovailoa and the concussions and everything, like, that's a very slippery slope. Yep. You know what I mean? Carolina with the whole what are we going to do with Bryce Young situation, and then the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis. And Keith, I talked about it on yesterday's pod while you were traveling. I talked about putting perfect pairing, Shedeur Sanders with Brian Callahan and that type of offense he's used to running with Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. And we talked about this in the summer. Will Levis didn't actually fit that offense. We took some blowback from some of the Titan fans that wanted to believe in Will Levis, but it hasn't looked good. And he hasn't really fit what they want to do. That's about 6 teams that need quarter. Devontae Adams traded to the New York Jets. So they get 8. They get an extra pick. So they have 8 picks. Keith, when you look at Shedeur, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Carson Beck, I think the impact on this draft class is that we're going to see these quarterbacks come off the board in round 1, right? And it may not be as high as some people want it to be, Keith, because we know the conversation around this draft class. Oh, there's no Trevor Lawrence. Well, I mean, look how Trevor Lawrence is playing right now in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't been the generational guy people called him to be. There's no Caleb Williams. But at the end of the day, when you have 6 teams, like the Cleveland Browns cannot walk through the 2025 NFL draft class and not add a quarterback. Like, the discussion every week is, are you benching Deshaun Watson at this point? I think we're going to see quarterbacks go, and I think we're going to get more than 3 in the first round right now, the way it looks.
Yeah, DP, I said last year, right, with this draft class that we had a supply and demand problem, and that's why we felt like quarterbacks are going to go off the board. DP, this year might be even worse, right? Like, and you have a couple teams that were just on the board as far as drafting quarterbacks in the Carolina Panthers and the Tennessee Titans, right? But then, like you said, you add in Tua Tagovailoa to the situation. Miami Dolphins, to be completely honest, y'all have invested too much money into your wide receiver core, not
Yeah.
to have a quarterback that you can be that can be reliable, right? And we know Tua is a Pro Bowl-esque quarterback, but obviously the injury situation that puts you in the quarterback race. I'm sorry, like you have to draft a quarterback, whether it's the first round or the second round, right? Then so that's 3 teams right there. Then, like you said, you add in the Cleveland Browns, you add in the New York Giants, you add in the Las Vegas Raiders. And then I still feel like DP, there's still teams with outside shots at drafting quarterbacks, right? And I was sitting there because I did my mock draft this past week, DP. And I was like, man, do I bump up a Garrett Nussmeier? Do I bump up a Miller Moss? Right? Like who do I put in these slots? Because it was almost a situation where there were not enough quarterbacks to go around. And I think that's kind of what's going to be the sentiment, DP, with the quarterback situation. Because to be completely honest, right, like even the Jacksonville Jaguars, with how Trevor Lawrence is playing, if that was not their guy, right, as far as what he means, Trevor Lawrence would be a guy that well, not Trevor Lawrence, but the Jaguars would be a team that you would say, hey, are they going to draft a quarterback, right? And you look at the Los Angeles Rams, what are they going to do, right? That's a prime candidate for a team that could potentially, if they want to segue this thing the right way, do the Green Bay Packers situation, draft a quarterback maybe a year or maybe too early, right? Have them sit down 1 or 2 years under Matthew Stafford. They're another team that can go a bunch of different ways. So the New Orleans Saints, right? Like, what is that experiment going to be? Derek Carr, you have Spencer Rattler. That's another team. TP it's like 8 of the top 12 teams can go after a quarterback.
It's crazy because especially when you mention the Rams, because it's like, I'm not gonna lie, one of the if Bryce Young was to be traded, one of my premier landing spots was the Rams. I was like, you put him in Sean McVay's offense, where you have Cooper Kupp, you have Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell's played well, Jordan Whittington. They have a run game. Offensive line right now is ravaged. They're just destroyed offensively by injuries. I think either all 5 starters or 4 of the 5 starters have been down or battled injuries all season. But when they're healthy, their offensive line can block in the pass protection. They can run the ball. Their defense is young. It's like, man, you put Bryce into that situation, sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year, and you say, when you take over, you're just a point guard. Don't go out here. Don't try to do too much. Just distribute the ball. We got the playmakers that'll make your life easy. But they're a team that absolutely, because you're not resting on the loins of Stetson Bennett. You're not going to be like, yeah, we're not taking the quarterback because we drafted Stetson Bennett in like the 3rd round or whatever he was drafted in 2 years ago. No, you're not going to do that. If you're in the position and you think about a Carson Beck or one of these like entering the season premier quarterbacks were to slip down the board and the Rams are, say, top 20. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, you don't have a whole ton of needs. Now, you could add a corner. You could maybe add another receiver, like add an explosive guy. But at the same time, you can get that on day 2. You know what I mean? But if you can get a Carson Beck, let him sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year with Sean McVay calling plays, that's a great situation. You were right, Keith. There are teams that we know need quarterbacks, and there's teams that's like, we might. Like, teetering that line.
Yeah, I'm gonna just start at the very top, and I'm gonna mention a team that we haven't even gotten to yet. So the Cleveland Browns need a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Jaguars, they're sticking with Trevor Lawrence. The Carolina Panthers need a quarterback. Cincinnati Bengals are good. The Los Angeles Rams can use a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans need a quarterback. The Las Vegas Raiders need a quarterback. The New Orleans Saints potentially need a quarterback. The Miami Dolphins potentially need a quarterback. The team we didn't talk about is the New York Jets, right? Because they still have a situation with Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to play for the next 5 years, right? Who is going to come in and back him up? You don't know if this is going to be the last year, if this thing goes disastrous. Aaron Rodgers has the type of personality to be like, you know what? I'm flat out done. I'm just over this. I ain't got time for this. I'm already a Hall of Famer. Whatever didn't work out, the end. Or even he has 1 more year, right? If he plays next year, then you still need a quarterback of the future. So if you're sitting there towards the top, right, which I know New York Jets fans don't want to hear that, but it's not looking good, right? You fired Robert Saleh, don't look like it was a Robert Saleh problem, right? You still need a quarterback to be able to transition. Like the franchise does not end the minute Aaron Rodgers retires. So you have to set yourself up for the future. And if you have a top 10 pick and an opportunity to grab one of these quarterbacks, you need to consider it.
No, you have to consider it because, again, like you said, like you fire your coach. Aaron Rodgers at the Monday Night Football is throwing Mike Williams under the bus. Like it looks toxic. And now you bring in Devontae Adams. Mike Williams may as well ask for a trade. You know what I mean? Like I'm never going to see the field or get the ball ever again. Like, you know, you got Alan Lazard, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams, go ahead and try to get out of New York and go somewhere else because you're not getting the ball there. So they definitely need a quarterback. And they crazy thing about it, they probably should have looked at least adding a young one this past draft.
We thought that was a prime spot, and people can say what they want about Spencer. I thought he had a okay game for his very first game playing with the New Orleans Saints. I think we had like 140 picks winning between quarterbacks. Like that was a team that should have just took a young guy. And why not let him learn under Aaron Rodgers, especially Aaron Rodgers coming off of the Achilles tear, right? And then potentially could be there for 2 years before you even have to play him, spend a fourth-round pick on him, and then see what happens in the future. But DP, I'm going to tell you about our future, man. You know, we're about to talk about wide receiver 2. That's what we're talking about coming up next, man. First of all, I think we can discuss who we have wide receiver 1 at this situation, and then we're going to talk about making the case for who's wide receiver 2 in this upcoming 2025 NFL draft class coming up next.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Making the case for wide receiver 2, but first, who is wide receiver 1? Keith, I don't know if you've changed paths. I'm sticking with Etienne McMillan. I'm sticking with the big 6'5", 215-pound, do-it-all receiver from Arizona, even though their offense doesn't look like it's humming, or firing on all cylinders right now coming off of that loss. But still, he's my top receiver right now. Who is your top receiver? Is it Torres or is it Travis Hunter? Like, Luther Burden? Like, you moving the pendulum, Keith?
No, I'm staying pat. It was T-Mac before. It's still T-Mac right now. We'll see if it's T-Mac at the end, right? But wide receiver 2, DP. Flip this back your way. Who do you have as wide receiver 2 right now?
Keith, I didn't actually think in the summer, I didn't think that I would actually be here with this player. But I watching the tape, man, I'm liking everything I'm seeing from Ole Miss wide receiver Trey Harris. I got him as my wide receiver 2. He's climbed the ladder so far this season. And what he's just been able to do, Keith, like ball skills. And for a guy that's 6'3", 215, 220, somewhere in there, bigger body receiver. But what I've seen from him also is route running, like tempo, nuance. Like it's just been it's been incredible to watch. And I think I talked about it. We talked about it too with Juice Wells, right? You have Juice Wells And once like Juice Wells was doing great up until SEC play started. And through, you know what I'm saying, then his play tapered off. Everything just kind of went downhill between his connection with Jackson Dart, stuff like that. And Trey Harris has not skipped a beat, really. You know what I mean? Like ever since SEC play started, he's got well over 300 yards receiving, if I'm not mistaken, and 2 touchdowns. And he even left the LSU game with seven receptions, 102 yards and a touchdown. He left that game. He got hurt, I think, with a lower leg injury or something like that. He ended up being in street clothes. But the route tempo, the body control, the throw, the catch he had in the red zone, where there was a bad ball by Jackson Dart. Like you want to put that ball helmet or higher. Your guy is looking at
That's
you.
That's a high and away ball. He threw that thing low and inside. Like, yo. he threw that to DB.
That's exactly what it was. He threw it at the back of the head of the DB, and you just saw Trey Harris go over the top, pluck the ball up. He can play all 3 wide receiver positions. So you see the football IQ, the X, the Y, the Z, you know, everything like that, man. I just think he's like, I'm going to tell you 2 names that came to mind for me, Keith, in terms of comps. To me, I think he's a little bit more athletic Michael Pittman. And then I start seeing some Rome Odunze in this game, where it's like that big physical frame. I'm just going to, like, if I'm put in that situation, I'm going to outmuscle you at every opportunity. And we watched Rome Odunze do that all year last year. No, one-on-one, back shoulder fade, 50-50 ball, red zone. It didn't really matter. We knew he could run routes and he had good enough speed down the field, but it was a fact of I'm bigger and stronger than you, and I'm going to lean on that every opportunity I get. I think with what we're seeing from Trey Harris, I think he's done enough for me to be at wide receiver 2 and jump a Luther Burden. I still don't know what Travis Hunter's going to do.
DP, I wish we had one of them alarms, right? We got a dun, 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 dun. I did not expect that, DP. I thought this was gonna be a rather we don't ever have boring segments, right? But I thought it was gonna be a routine segment where we both probably picked the same wide receiver 2 when we talked about it. But that is not the case. You came all the way out of, I don't know if it's left field or right field, right? One of those fields you came out of.
I came out of the dugout, Keith. I ran out of the dugout with that one.
Was not expecting that one, but I think it's a rather interesting take and look in it. And what it's going to do is force people and force myself, right, to even go back to the film, reevaluate him. I think it's going to be interesting to see if those same people that hated Keon Coleman are going to like Trey Harris, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just it's interesting how storylines change from situation to situation. DP, I just had no reason to switch my wide receiver 2, man. Travis Hunter, right? Like, I that's who I went with. If I'm making the case, DP, it's just simply the guy's a baller at the end of the day. I just the thing with him is, and we'll have this conversation, and the first time I mention this, and then I mention it again and have different conversations, is that, you know, with the injury stuff, right? Like, how are people going to take that and him being off of the field and him playing that corner impacting his ability to help you at wide receiver because he gets injured? But I think as a wide receiver, he's just, I don't know. Like I said, he reminds me of some blend of Chris Olave and Jerry Jeudy. Like, the guy just simply gets the job done. He's a playmaker. I think he could take the top off. I think he's gotten better as a route runner. And you could just see, like, just experience, right? Like him, and you still have to realize that he split snaps, right? And so what people don't understand is you get a finite amount of practice time. So he's not able to practice at wide receiver full time because he has to practice at corner, right? And vice versa. So he's still developing. So you're watching him develop, honestly, during the games, right? Because he's not getting a full slate of cornerback practice or a full slate of wide receiver practice. And I think that's what is extremely impressive at the end of the day. So I'm going to go with Travis Hunter, DP, for my wide receiver 2.
No, I mean, you know, I love Travis, man. I think that discussion about where he's going to play is just going to continue to loom because, like you said, Keith, and it's a part that just nobody thinks about. Is like, that's why for me, it's like he's my, over at Bleacher Report, he's my number 1 rated prospect because I'm just like, overall, because I'm like, his ceiling is so high at both spots, whereas like, okay, if he gives up a catch, it's not going back to the sideline, looking at the Microsoft tablet. What did I do wrong? It's go back to the sideline, keep my helmet on, stand by the offense, and Shedeur Sanders and Pat Shurmur. Okay, what's the game plan for this next drive, and vice versa? When he, you know, does his thing, you know, you think about catching the 80-yard touchdown pass, running that full way 80 yards, come back to the sideline, get a little bit of a breather while the the special teams is kick, field goal, kickoff, and all that. Now you're going out there having to cover the number one receiver. And it's like he doesn't really get the time to just really truly develop at either position. I think his ceiling at both positions are high. And that Chris Olave, Jerry Jeudy comp, like that's kind of scary when you think about it, because the speed of Olave and route running, the route running of Jerry Jeudy, the movement skills, and I think one of the most like underrated parts of his game as a receiver is that spatial awareness and the ability to make people miss. Like,
and that's the Jerry Jeudy part for me. Like the start-stop ability, he's shaking people.
Remember the play against Nebraska last year where he caught the ball in the middle of the field, juked two defenders, and they ran into each other? I'm like, you don't really see that. you don't see that too often on the field, and I think he's done that so many times. We just know that he's explosive, but I think and the route tree is like there to develop. Like as an NFL team, you're just saying, listen, what do we need most? Do we need a corner? Is he playing? Does he want to play? Have that conversation with him, and if he says, listen, I'm playing whatever position he decides to play, you just feel good about drafting him because, like, man, now he gets to hone in. Keith, you know, is from your coaching background, how many LSU players went to the league as a rookie? They were one thing, but by year 2 and 3, they've gotten used to training in the offseason, working on their craft, and then they're a totally different person when you see them again after that second, third year, because now they're consummate pro. And it's like, now I'm into my game and I'm playing at the highest level.
Yep, I agree 100% with DP. Let's wrap this thing up. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the biggest bag fumblers. DP, we have one of the highest slated college football weekends, right? We're talking about Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, Ohio State. We had LSU, Ole Miss, right? We had Penn State, USC. We had Kansas State, Colorado, right? We had so many high-profile matchups that a lot of guys play well, but we got to talk about which guys had trending downward stock portfolios, right? Like draft stock portfolios, and we're going to talk about that conversation coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you placed your bets. Speaking of bets, FanDuel Sportsbook has right now the season awards betting odds live on their sportsbook. And guys, you can go and look at the AP NFL regular season Offensive Player of the Year award, where Derrick Henry is the leading favorite right now, plus 140. But his quarterback, Lamar Jackson, is plus 2,500, while Justin Jefferson is plus 550 and CeeDee Lamb is plus 2,200. You can get in on the action right now. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Just go to FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our everydayers. The biggest bag fumbler so far, Keith, for the season for me. And this is a guy, Keith, that I was very high on over the summer. Quarterback out of Houston, Donovan Smith.
Mm-hmm.
To have such a promising season last year, you just see something like, okay, 6'5", 240, he's athletic, big arm. It's like, all right, just come into this season. Don't, cut down the turnovers and play your game. And I know he lost multiple weapons through the transfer portal. But Keith, coming into that into week 6, he was benched finally because he's played terribly the entire season. He got benched. I don't believe he's getting that starting job back. He ended up throwing 2. He played 3 total snaps or dropbacks against TCU, I think late in that game or whatever case it be, and threw like 2 passes. If there's anybody that this has been the biggest bag fumbler, you think about being a true X factor in the class where people were down on the quarterback position, and all you had to do is go out here. And I'm not saying you go out here and beat Cam Newton. You don't have to be some superhero, but just go out here and play good ball, cut the turnovers down, play good ball, be efficient, be effective, be accurate, and make the right decisions. Then go to one of these all-star games and rip it and light it up, right? And at least you get yourself into day 2 range. I'm not saying you get selected. Now, if you could have taken what you did last year and even doubled down on it and got even better and then cut down the turnovers, no, you probably do make and start taking over games in the Big 12, right? Then you do probably solidify yourself as like a back into the first round type of talent or put yourself in that conversation. Donovan Smith on the season, Keith, like I said, just has not played well. 64.5% completion, 689 yards passing, 6.3 yards per attempt, 2 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's put the ball in harm's way time and time again. So when I saw that he got benched, I was not surprised. I was a little more surprised at the fact that it took so long, because he literally, I think before he got benched, Keith, he went 2 straight games as a starter with less than 80 yards passing. Damn. Like, yeah. So big on the biggest bag fumblers, and this one I take on the chin because I expected him to. There was some projection in there, but I expected him to at least play up to the level he played last year, maybe a little bit better. Yeah, no, he actually's played much, much worse, and now he's on the bench.
Yeah, and because I remember you were excited about him coming out of out of summer, scouting, right? Like watching him, but that was a transfer from Texas Tech to Houston, right? Because that was Texas Tech film that you had watched on him, and man, that's disappointing, right? I know, because I know you said you've seen all of the physical profile and things like that and what he could be.
It was his Houston tape because he transferred the year before, so he did play 1 year with Houston, but I mean he looked pretty good.
So I wonder, and what I guess I was trying to just identify issues, right? And if he was already at Houston, then maybe it's the change in scheme, right? That's different, because I think the one thing that did change, what I'm pretty sure, that they had the new head coach, right?
I think so.
Head coach from Tulane is now at Houston, right? And that's the situation over there. So maybe
losing all those weapons, Sam and losing Brown,
Matthew Golden, right? The other wide receiver,
Golden too, yeah.
So it's definitely a different situation over there for him. All right, but DP, my guy. And I'm not gonna say the biggest, not the biggest, right? But I guess this, like that there's, when you slated to make a lot, you're slated to lose a lot, right? And it's one of the higher ranked draft prospects that we had. And I was hoping coming off of this weekend that there was going to be a statement made. And that was with running back Quinshon Judkins, right? And I think that his individual, because I seen it in flashes in the Ohio State Oregon game, right? That his individual athletic ability is there, but the production is not. And I'm sitting there because I went to the Ohio State Oregon game, and I'm like, hey, if Ohio State is going to win this game, and obviously it was a close game, it was a good game, it was a classic college football game, right? But if they were going to dominate in this game and win this game, it was going to be behind the running backs, right? Ohio State's running back, Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, being able to run the football, play action, and just like physically impose themselves. And the production is not there. And this is just the wrong class, DP, not to have the production, right? Like that's going to be the scary part. Like, is that, and we're talking about 2 guys, DP, that, and biggest bag fumblers, right? And we're talking about transfers and coaching changes and all that stuff. Both of these guys, Quinshon transferred from Ole Miss to here, right? And doesn't look the same. And then Donovan Smith, right? He had a coaching change. And it's like all of these factors, right, with the movements in college football are affecting these guys. And so I'm looking at Quinshon and I'm just like, man, because the statement could be made is that, hey, Ashton Jeanty is clear RB1, and then now Omari and Hampton is RB2, right? Like just based off of production, because they're probably very similar in stature and size. And then now you're the guy that's teetering on RB3. Hey, are you going to get into the first round type of conversation? I personally still like Quinshon a lot, but this production, if it keeps this way, DP, is going to impact him.
Easily, Keith. I mean, because you don't box score scout, but there's a lot of scouts that look at production and be like, okay, you've been a productive back for 2 years. And it's like, did you make the mistake going to Ohio State? Now, team success, a lot of people said NIL, all that stuff do play a factor in going there, right? You can get a bag from Ohio State. Ohio State's going to be a very competitive team and be one of the best teams in the nation, right? But not being able to get consistent carries. It's crazy because I think if you put any of these, especially how Chip Kelly's running this thing, it's literally a 2-man rushing attack. And it's not just, hey, you get 25 carries. Like Ashton Jeanty I think the backs behind him, at least the secondary back is a good player from what I've seen on tape. But Ashton Genty is getting 30 carries a game, like 30 touches. Like he gets to dominate and feel the pacing and tempo of the defense. What kind of defense is it? Is it a power defense? Is it a speed defense? How do they, how do you manipulate these guys? Are their second level defenders super urgent and aggressive? Are they going to just try to get to the outside where I can cut back up? How do I beat this defense? You can't do that off of 5 carries. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
5 carries here, a carry here. Like you can't do that as a running back. So I'm not going to lie. We talked about it last week, Keith, where some prospects might be better off returning for a year. Travion Henderson's going to the league. He's a senior. He's going.
Yeah. Yep.
Quinshawn, you a true junior. If Chip Kelly doesn't start leading the way with you, you might go ahead and start preparing yourself and say, hey, I'm willing to come back, but I better be the guy next year, and I better see all the touches because I can't do this.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult situation, and you don't know what's going to happen with his draft stock overall, right? But I think it's just now it's not a question mark of him, but like you said, that the production part is going to play a factor in it because then people are going to dive. Yeah, they're going to dive deeper into the film. Oh, is he a scheme dependent guy? Does he lack this and that and those type of situations? And a guy that we had bookmarked that, hey, this is probably going to be a top 10 prospect is now, some people going to have him ranked 25th and 30th and things like that. So it's just a storyline to pay attention to as we move forward, with this college football season. And obviously they still have half the season, and we're assuming Ohio State is going to make the playoffs and things like that. Yeah. So still enough resume stuff to be out there, but definitely something for people to have on their radar. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated here. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we have where you at? Like, we're going to point out some prospects. Who's missing in action right now? Prospect spotlight, but also Benjamin Morrison, star cornerback from Notre Dame, is out for the season. How does that impact the cornerback class for 2025? We're going to talk about all that all that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.